I'd like to welcome you all to the Bengal Conversation Conference on the second day, and today's theme is all to do with the fate of displaced persons, i.e. the refugees, from a global perspective. In our panel, we have two experts, one from West Africa, from Ghana, Mr. Tettey, and another is from Bangladesh, Mr. Asif Munier. He is now a freelancer, but both of them, they dealt with this issue for long from a professional perspective. Simon worked for UNHCR, and our Asif Munier, he sort of was active in this field for long, and they've come up with a lot of articles and took part in quite a few conferences, been to many countries of the world. And with reference to Bangladesh, we know about the plight of the Rohingya refugees who migrated from Myanmar, our neighbor. And also, we must not forget the plight of the stranded Pakistanis, or the Muhajirs, or for that matter, locally known as Biharis in Bangladesh. Some of them, they have given the right to sort of have citizenship in the country, those who are born and bred here, and they have been issued national ID cards, things like that. And we know about the plight of the Palestinians, people in Western Sahara, and also in different parts of Africa. So we are in good hands. To start with, I would like to sort of ask Asif Munier to enlighten us on this issue. Please.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to this discussion. I think the topic is about unresolved fates. So unresolved in the sense that whether it's in Bangladesh or anywhere in the world, the situation of refugees has been unresolved for a very long time. And we may reflect upon it in a way that, by definition, those who become refugees are actually forced out of their own homeland. So unless there is a change in their homeland, it's very difficult, and so far we don't see them returning or having a sort of a long-term solution, and that's why it remains unresolved. Although there are sort of different kinds of models that have been tried out. So what I would say at the beginning is that what we probably need to review is that, okay, what have we tried and what has worked and what hasn't. I would like to highlight particularly the one new instrument that has come in the last decade, the Global Compact on Refugees. There's one on migration also. If you recall, in 2016, there was a high-level meeting of heads of states in New York in 2016, where at that time, the refugee crisis and the migration crisis, whether it's in Europe or in North Africa and other places, there was sort of seen that, okay, the Refugee Convention or the existing migration instruments at the UN were not enough to look at the rights and the protection mechanism. So by 2018, there were these two new instruments called Global Compact on Migration and Global Compact on Refugees. And since then, we're almost at a threshold where we can say that it's almost about 10 years or so in terms of these instruments being in place. So at that time, it was seen that, okay, this is slightly looking at it from the perspective of the refugee themselves, in terms of their voice, their own protection, and their own sort of perspectives into the solution. But how have we really, featured in that or made any progress? It's important to review that. There is an international high-level meeting in 2025 organized by UNHCR, but probably by 2026 there needs to be one similar to 2016 in 10 years' time to review where we are at, because there has been new changes during this time. The major influx in Bangladesh of Rohingyas, that was in 2017. And there's, of course, the Ukraine war and the refugees from Europe. So these are certain changes which happened during these 10 years. And of course, there has been a move from, for instance, Afghan refugees to Pakistan within this region. So how have we tried to deal with these solutions? So maybe that's kind of like the overall at the beginning, and maybe I'll have one or two suggestions towards the end on what we can do or what world leaders need to do, maybe to some extent change the scenario from unresolved to resolved.
Okay. Thank you, this stage. Now is the turn of Simon,
Okay, thank you.
Enlighten
Professor.
us on the African context too.
Thank you. Well, I would like to just give an overview of the possible causes of refugee situation. Okay. How can one become refugee? And it's such a way that it's all of us are bound to be refugee one day, So first of all, the common thing that one can become a refugee is through conflict, which could be wars or civil wars. These are situations under which one can be a refugee, because then you have to flee from your country to another to save your life, for your life's sake. Another one too could be persecutions. So for instance, with gender and sexual orientation factors that are happening, emerging all over the world now. So assuming one is in a country that those gender and sexual orientations are not recognized, then one will have to flee for his or her lives. Because if you are in their country, you can be persecuted. Another one too will be climate issues, climate events. So for instance, the environmental and climate changes, we could be flooding. So for instance, if maybe we are here, the whole place is flooded, where we have to relocate ourselves. So these are, and then human rights violations, so where human rights are being violated. So in the countries where, so for instance, where maybe females cannot go to school, cannot be educated, they can't go to school, they can't have their future realized through, and have their dreams realized through the systems of the government or the authorities. Then people will now have to flee for their lives. So these four main issues are the main causes under which one become a refugee. And as part of international obligations, if this occur, countries are obliged to accept these people into their country and provide legal frameworks and have a moral duty in national interest to really shelter these people and save their lives. Because first of all, in the life of, we always say that one ran away because of his or her life. So in the situation of refugees, all countries are being obliged to really obey these, to respect these rights. And these are my initial comments for now.
Thank you. Well, you wanted to tell us about how to resolve,
and taking from your cue about the moral responsibility, I think one way of looking at it, and this is something that has been discussed or being debated, is that the burden sharing.
Okay.
Whether it's the host country, but not just the host country, because sometimes these are, geopolitics.
Okay.
So these are not bilateral issues.
All right.
Whether we look at Bangladesh or any other country,
Okay.
it is part of the geopolitics and sometimes part of the global nature of politics. So, in terms of burden sharing, one, of course, is the financial aspect of it. Because these are prolonged time that they need to remain in a particular place, how do you really share the burden collectively? The financial cost of the managing a population and a population, but also technical support and sharing that globally. Whoever has what kind of expertise. It's not just the UN or international agencies. Countries need to have that share of burden. And the other aspect is also in terms of resolving the crisis. Of course, it is difficult because if these are related to geopolitics, sometimes it is difficult. But then if there are collective efforts, whether it at the UN level or for, say, regional platforms, regional forums, high level, they could also kind of help negotiate to resolve a situation where either people are having an atmosphere or a situation where they can go back to their own country, but that is rare. In that case, the issue of third country resettlement. Now, this is very highly debated, but then UN and a lot of other organizations have been promoting that. What has not been promoted so much is that looking at regional solutions to this resettlement. So, because people, if they're not able to go back to their own country because of whether it's climate change or conflict, they may still want to remain within the same region rather than going completely to a different alien culture, alien place. So far, the practice has been to the Western world. And then that has also kind of reduced the number of people being resettled in the third country. So in terms of burden sharing, this resettlement issue can be part of global dialogues so that you could look at what kind of solutions can be provided, especially in terms of third country resettlement, which region, and then again looking at from the refugee perspective, that what they will be more comfortable with in terms of their cultural practice, their religion, their affinity to a particular region. So these would be very important. Quite often, their voice is not really heard in this process. So we need to look at that. And also, we live in an age where sometimes there's xenophobia, there's also a lot of negative attitude towards refugees and migrants. There has to be a process outside the political arena to find solutions or change people's mindset. One quick example I would give is the Paris Olympics this year. Because there, with the UN agency involvement, there was actually a refugee sports team participating in different sports. And this is for the first time in the Olympics that we have had this. So this is kind of helps to counter the narrative, the negative narrative towards refugees. Of course, it's not always predominant. There are sometimes people who do accept refugees, but there can be other ways, or sports, music, in other ways. And in a lot of places, there are examples where refugees have come forward and actually they have been able to promote a particular country or a culture where they are actually staying, which is not their homeland. So this could sort of move towards a global scenario where refugees find a space within wherever they are, and also in terms of trying to look at the local solutions or regional and global solutions.
Good. What's your take, Sam?
I perfectly agree with him, and I think under international laws, all countries are obliged to accept refugees. And apart from accepting them, of course, then now So it's like someone is running away from for his or her own life.
Okay.
You first need to receive the person.
Okay.
Then you screen that, okay, probably maybe this person could be maybe someone who is not good for your country. So maybe, for instance, he has a bad criminal record or something. Then you can now, in the name of national interest, then find a way, first save the life, and then find a way of expelling those people.
Okay.
You know, so all countries are under international obligations to respect and accept refugees, irrespective of where they are coming from and irrespective of the country they are going to. Okay. Yes, so that is the first thing. But then the second step is where you screen and know realize. So for instance, there was some, last year for instance, there were some refugees in Germany that were involved in criminal activities, stealing, creating a lot of commotion, and even stabbing people. Those people were screened and deported back to their home country.
All right.
Yes. So this is in national interest. Yeah, because if the person is becoming violent or you want to save the person's life, the person is becoming more violent to your people, you cannot save the person's life any longer. And then I agree with the fact that he mentioned the Olympics. You know, some people actually want medals. Some of the refugees actually want medals. So this is really a positive innovation by the UNHCR, sponsoring them this year to participate in the Paris Olympics. And as he indicated, so first of all, let's say you bring in a refugee.
Okay.
What next? So let's say the person cannot go back. What next? So that is where we have what we call the durable solutions, where those that need to be educated, the children or whatever, can go to school. Those that cannot be educated or don't want to learn. You see, not everyone wants to go to school or to learn, get higher education. Those people, they are trained on a job, on they are being trained on an apprenticeship or on the job training to acquire a skill. So maybe you want to be a mechanic, or you want to be maybe fabrics or tailor or something, or if you want to learn, even some people even want to do things that one could have to go to school for it, but they just don't want to step into the school program. Those people go straight into the program, and then they teach them the practical bit, and then they learn those trades, and then they pick up from there, so that those people can now find livelihood through these durable solutions. And UNHCR is working with the host countries in providing that, so that one day these people will have skills and provide livelihood to themselves and their families. So I think this is how every country needs to do. I'm aware that some countries really want to repatriate refugees to other countries, which is not really accepted under international law. I hope that policy is never implemented one day, Yes. Yeah, but I think so far we need to be more accommodative, because everyone can be a refugee. You can be in the Western world, you can be
potential
anywhere.
Is there.
Exactly. The potential is there, yeah.
So Asif, what's your idea about those who migrated to Europe from countries like Syria and, settled there, and can that be a model which was pursued by the Germans, to be replicated elsewhere?
It's possible, and also looking at, again, it's very difficult to find durable solutions also, but if there are genuine cases, like from North Africa, and different places, especially when the ISIS was involved and a lot of people had to leave their countries, or because of internal conflict. The solutions in Europe can be, looking at sort of how you can be more humane and take the responsibility. But at the same time, for instance, from our region, from South Asia, there's also a move, but it's kind of like the irregular movement to Europe.
Okay.
So, whereas from North Africa who are going, they have genuine needs, but from our part, it's more economic, but not necessarily like in terms of refugees. So it's more like irregular migration.
Right.
So that has to be kind of managed well, and of course either finding solutions locally so that people do not have to go as irregular migrants and through risky channels, and giving the opportunity to the people who really need it more, whether they need asylum and more protection. So giving more opportunity towards them. So making a prioritization. And maybe that can help, and maybe Europe, in that sense, and especially there are sort of more looking at European policies that can be a win-win solution for those who seek to be taking refuge, but also looking at solutions where they can be involved in whether it's livelihood and locally integrated. Now, sometimes it can be a problem if there are a large number of refugees in a country which is overpopulated, something that we face in Bangladesh. But whether it's in Western countries or even in some cases, there have been sort of arrangements within, say, Australia and New Zealand, so where their own population is not large, so they are able to accommodate others. So that needs to be looked into. So, it's not a one solution that would fit for all countries. You could look at where it's possible. And then again, it's a question of discussing globally. One country needs to think about their own population, but also looking at where it's more possible than which countries are more possible or not. So even within Europe, there would be sort of certain places where you would need to balance it out a little bit with the different other population as well. So even within Europe, there needs to be burden sharing as well. We know that there are certain countries where people feel that there would be more acceptable laws for them. But then the others need to replicate, and maybe it's more like a Europe-wide policy that they need to sort of more have a little bit more reform so that it's across Europe and maybe across different regions.
Okay, right. What about entities like SADC in Africa? Do they have anything to do with the refugees?
SADC is the one for Southern Africa.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, but they also deal with refugees. Yes. But the SADC region, which is the Southern Africa, have less of these events that result in refugees. But the main refugee issues occur within DRC, which is the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yeah.
And then
used to be known as Zaire as well.
Yes, used to be called Zaire. Right. And South Sudan.
Yeah.
So all these refugees actually move into Uganda.
Okay.
So Uganda actually is the hub, sort of, for refugees in Africa. Yeah,
but
because
it used to be known as the Pearl of East Africa.
Exactly.
Very tranquil,
very
sort of attractive.
Yeah. So most of these refugees within these neighboring countries actually move into Uganda. And Uganda have really shown good leadership and hospitality and received these refugees. Yeah. So you will notice, as part of the recovery in South Sudan, for instance, some of the refugees have actually gained have a durable solutions for them and are staying in Uganda comfortably. So Uganda has really done well in that sense. In Ghana too, in the 90s, where there was a war in Liberia
Okay.
and Sierra Leone,
Yeah.
where we receive a lot of refugees. And you know, the funny thing is Ghana does not share border with Sierra Leone and Liberia.
All right.
They have to come all the way via Ivory Coast.
Okay.
So, but Ghana created a refugee camp called the Bunumbura Refugee Camp,
Okay.
where these Liberian and Sierra Leonean refugees are being held.
Okay.
Yes. Actually, the government is trying to close it down, but because most of them have either integrated into the Ghanaian society, they've married Ghanaians, and have even given birth to dual citizenship. Okay. So, and some have also relocated, gone back because everything is settled down now. Yeah.
So most of the people, they prefer northern part of Ghana or southern part of Ghana? I mean,
no, mainly southern part.
Southern.
Yeah, because you know, our capital city, which is Accra, is in the southern part.
That's right.
So most of them relocated to the southern part. So there is a suburb, which is a town just outskirts of the capital city.
Okay.
That this Bunumbura refugee camp was settled. They were settled there. Yeah. So I think we have also done our part. And as part of that, you know, they are also part of the ECOWAS, which is the Economic Community of West African States, which is the 15 countries within this West Africa.
Yeah.
So by then we had an obligation to receive these refugees.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. So I can say so far, the main refugees are in Ghana, and then Uganda. I can say in Africa, because the other African countries don't really have the issues and don't really receive so much like we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to come up with last words or something?
Yeah, maybe just in coming back to a little bit to Bangladesh, our chief advisor recently, when he went to the UN, particularly on the Rohingya issue, he was calling for an international conference to resolve the Rohingya crisis. But as I was mentioning before, that overall on the refugee issue, we need to have a global level, high level dialogue.
Okay.
So sooner we have that, apart from what UNHCR is taking initiative, global leaders need to look at the current sort of crisis at different places, and even forward looking that we may have more refugees in the world, and then how do we resolve it? Okay. So global sort of discussion should be high on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to come up with any?
I think
kind of a conclusion. You know?
Yes. So with the conclusion that I will talk about is when we look at what Angela Merkel did in Germany, that brought in almost 1 million refugees.
Yeah.
I think other European countries can do that because of the population decrease. So, for instance, like Japan, for instance, the population, the birth rates keep reducing.
Yeah, that's right.
So, these are countries, as you said, that can take in refugees, you know?
Okay, yeah, of course. Yeah, it's true.
You know, these are countries that can take in refugees. Yeah. So, I think if countries that are having low birth rates should critically look at refugee strategies.
Okay.
And as he said, so we need a global discussion so that these countries can be told in the face that you need something like that. Even Singapore birth rate now is 1.3 on average. So at the end of the day, one day you wake up and there's no proper Singaporean in the country. Yeah. So these countries are very rich countries. Right. So they need to be told that, well, you need to take this responsibility and use it as a way of, in the short term, beef up your population.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Saman and Asif, for your valuable input. We got a lot of food for thought for future discourse and discussion. On behalf of the organizers of the Bengal Conversation, conference in general and CGS in particular. I'd like to thank you, both of you, and look forward to sort of interacting with you in future. Thank you.
Thank you.